Today, we dive deep into a story that has resonated with thousands of English learners and native speakers alike, The Silent Husband. This isn't just a story, it's a profound lesson in understanding, a lesson that will fundamentally change the way you think about communication. By the end of this journey, you won't just learn new vocabulary, you'll discover a truth about love that is rarely spoken. This is Level 3 English, so let's get started.
Ilara had always dreamt of a life filled with noise, laughter, music, and endless conversations. She was vibrant, a storm of words and emotion. So when she met John, his quiet strength was the perfect counterpoint. It was an intriguing balance. He listened, she talked. It worked. They married quickly, two halves fitting perfectly into a whole. But as the years settled, John's quiet nature didn't just counter Ilara's energy, it began to consume it. In the first 2 years of their marriage, John had become a ghost in their own home. He would come home from his carpentry job, eat dinner in silence, read the newspaper, and offer only monosyllabic answers. Yes. No. Fine. Ilara tried everything. She would recount her day with theatrical detail, the arguments with her boss, the funny incident at the bakery, the exciting news about her promotion. John would simply nod, his eyes distant. One evening, after Ilara had spent 20 minutes excitedly describing a plan for a weekend getaway, John only looked up and said, "Sounds good." That was it. Ilara felt a sharp, cold sting of rejection. It wasn't just silence. It felt like a wall, a thick, impenetrable wall built brick by brick with unsaid words. She started asking herself the terrifying question, was this the biggest mistake of her life? The moment Ilara started to plan her exit, she received a mysterious, unmarked package that changed everything. The contents were shocking, and we'll reveal what was inside after we discuss a piece of vocabulary that describes Ilara's emotional state.
Ilara's friends, her sister, even her mother all noticed. "He's emotionally unavailable," her sister Maya declared. "You deserve someone who sees you." Ilara had to admit, the loneliness was an unbearable weight. She missed the man she thought she married, the one whose quietness she had initially found charming, not suffocating. John's carpentry workshop in the backyard became his sanctuary. He spent more and more time there, the rhythmic sound of his hammer and saw, the only communication Ilara heard from him. The shop was always locked. "Client confidentiality," he'd explained once, simply. One Saturday, a major argument finally erupted. Ilara confronted him, her voice trembling not with anger, but with deep, painful sadness. "Why, John? Why are you always silent? Do you even see me anymore? Do you even love me?" John stopped the rhythmic movement of his hands and looked at her. His eyes, usually distant, were filled with a profound, almost desperate exhaustion. He didn't yell. He didn't defend himself. He just said, "I'm doing my best, Ilara. I can't talk right now." He turned back to his workbench. The cold finality of that statement shattered Ilara. Can't talk right now? It had been 2 years of right now. That evening, Ilara opened her laptop and searched for apartments. She packed a small suitcase, planning to leave when John was at work the next morning. She needed space. She needed noise. She needed a voice. And then the package arrived. It was a small, heavy box, completely unmarked. Ilara opened it with a letter opener, her heart pounding. Inside was not what she expected. It contained a small wooden carving of a miniature bench, intricate, detailed, and utterly beautiful. Attached was a note written in John's blocky handwriting: Alara, look closer at the bench. What did Alara find carved into the tiny bench that made her drop the small suitcase she was holding? We'll find out soon. But first, let's explore the psychological principle behind John's inability to express himself and how it affects thousands of people every day. Ilara, hands shaking, turned the carving over. The miniature bench was an exact replica of the first bench John ever built for her apartment. But this one had something new. Carved delicately into the wood, in a spot almost invisible to the naked eye, were 3 words. Not "I love you," but a question: "Are you leaving?" The fear in that tiny carving hit Alara like a physical blow. Her husband knew. He hadn't been distant. He had been observing her sadness, and he was terrified. Alara rushed to his workshop. The door was unlocked. The room smelled of sawdust and varnish, a familiar scent that now felt heavy with secrets. And then she saw it. The workshop was completely filled with wooden sculptures, carvings, and meticulously crafted items. It wasn't a business for clients. It was a museum of their life. A carved wooden calendar with every single date since their marriage marked with a tiny heart-shaped notch. A miniature wooden replica of the exact wedding dress Alara wore, complete with carved lacework. The entire wall was covered in hundreds of small, square wooden tiles. Each tile contained a single word or a short sentence. Ilara approached the wall, tears blurring her vision. These tiles were John's language. She started reading them. "I'm sorry I was late to dinner tonight. You look beautiful in that blue dress. I had a terrible day at work. I'm so proud of your promotion." And then she found a series of tiles arranged next to each other, forming a silent confession. "I love you more than words. My throat closes when I try to tell you. The words get stuck. Please don't go." Ilara finally understood. John wasn't choosing silence. He was trapped by it. He suffered from a specific, intense anxiety when attempting deep emotional conversations. For him, the silence was not a weapon. It was a cage, and he had been trying to communicate, not with his voice, but with his hands. He was speaking his truth, but she hadn't been listening to the right channel. The next morning, John found a note from Ilara that wasn't written on paper. It was a carving. What message did she carve that made John finally speak after 2 years? We'll find out in the conclusion. Ilara didn't leave. She stood in the sawdust-covered workshop for hours, just absorbing his silent confessions. She realized the profound, terrifying courage it must have taken for him to continue carving those tiles every single day, trying desperately to breach the wall between them. The next morning, John came home to an empty kitchen, but he found the note. It wasn't a tile. It was a small piece of wood, a fragment he'd left on his workbench. Ilara had taken one of his smallest, sharpest tools and carved a single symbol into the wood. It was the symbol of a tiny, detailed, open mouth. Beneath the mouth, she had carved a single word: try. John picked up the carving. His hands, usually so steady with the grain of the wood, were shaking uncontrollably. He walked into the living room where Ilara was sitting quietly, holding the carved miniature bench he had given her. He stood in the doorway, staring at the floor, then at the bench, then finally, his eyes met hers. "Ilara,
he began. His voice was husky, rough from disuse. He was trying to push through the anxiety that had been his constant companion. I. He couldn't force the words out. His body tensed, the anxiety winning again. Ilara didn't rush him. She simply stood up, walked to him, and gently took his hands and placed them on the wooden carvings of their life that she had brought from the workshop. "John," she whispered, "you don't have to speak a lot. You just have to speak your truth. Even just one word." John looked at the carving of her dress, then at the miniature bench, then back at her face. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He finally spoke, his voice cracking but clear. "Stay." It was the simplest, most profound word she had ever heard. It wasn't the roar of conversation she had always craved, but it was the quiet, undeniable language of his heart. "Always," Ilara replied, and she hugged him, finally tearing down the wall of silence between them. She learned that love doesn't always speak in the language we expect, and sometimes the deepest devotion is found not in words, but in the meticulous, painstaking effort to communicate, no matter the obstacle.
The story of John and Ilara teaches us that communication isn't just about the words we use. It's about recognizing and honoring the effort to connect. If you are currently learning English, remember this: the mistakes you make are not a sign of failure. They're simply your own beautifully carved words, your own attempt to build a bridge between your thoughts and the world. Don't let the fear of silence keep you from speaking. Try. That's the most important word you can learn. If you found this story moving and this vocabulary useful, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you more high-quality, emotional stories for your English learning journey. Do you prefer stories about communication or stories about overcoming adversity? Tell us in the comments below. And click the link here to watch our next Level 3 story about a woman who sacrificed her biggest dream for her family, only to receive a surprising gift 20 years later.